Excuse me, your curtain. Please allow me to help.
Help? From you? Spare me your white savior complex.
I didn't mean to offend. I just thought you should know that
That I should know what?
Snow White finally scraped past the $200 million mark worldwide. But don't pop the champagne just yet. This ain't the fairy tale win Disney was hoping for. It's more like a slow-motion stumble in glass slippers. So let's break down this awkward milestone and take a peek at what's really going on with Rachel Zegler's Hollywood journey, 'cause it ain't looking too magical right now. Now, depending on where you look, the numbers don't exactly match up. Some sources have the movie at $195.2 million, while Box Office Mojo generously reports $200.21 million. But hey, let's go with the generous take. Let's pretend it actually crossed the $200 million line, just to be extra nice. After all, Snow White has been limping along since day one, so might as well cut it some slack, right? But let's not sugarcoat it. This movie flopped hard. Sure, $200 million might sound okay, until you look at what Disney dropped into it. Most reports say the production budget was around $260 to $269 million, and that's before the pricey reshoots. That means the real spend likely soared past $300 million. Even with tax write-offs and financial tricks, Disney is still staring at a massive money pit here. So, what were they thinking? Spending that kind of cash on a film led by someone who, let's be real, isn't exactly a household name? Rachel Zegler might be talented, but she wasn't carrying A-list clout. This kind of budget needs guaranteed star power, not Hollywood wishful thinking. Rachel Zegler's rise in Hollywood is looking more forced than natural. If you check her IMDb, West Side Story was basically her big break, and since then, it feels like the industry is desperate to make her the next big thing, whether people are buying it or not. But here's the issue. She still hasn't starred in a single movie that actually hit big with audiences. Some defenders might point to Snow White's 72% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, trying to spin it like there's love out there. But let's keep it real. That score comes from the tiny handful of folks who even bothered to watch it in theaters. And with Rotten Tomatoes tweaking how they count scores, that number might be more smoke and mirrors than truth. The actual feedback? It's rough. The critic score is sitting at a pitiful 37%. One verified reviewer nailed it, saying the original Snow White was a 10/10. And if you're gonna touch a classic like that, you'd better respect it, not butcher it into something totally unrecognizable. But here's the wild twist. This movie doesn't tank because of Zegler. It sinks despite her. She's not the one who broke it. The writing was already trash. The script is broken at the foundation, and no actress, no matter how talented, could have fixed this mess. Now back to the numbers. Yeah, Disney might have hit that $200 million mark globally, but after the theaters take their slice, Disney's cut is only around $100 million. That's a brutal hit when you remember the production budget pushed $300 million. And we're not even talking about the massive marketing costs yet. Even with their lighter promo push, insiders say that added another $100 million. So we're talking about a $200 million loss. That's not just a flop, that's a full-blown disaster. Now let's talk about Rachel Zegler's situation after all this heat. Rachel Zegler's latest move? She's hitting the stage at the legendary London Palladium in a production of Ada, stepping into the role of Eva Peron, a part that should be a big, glamorous win for her career. The promo posters hype her up as Golden Globe winner Rachel Zegler and proudly list her roles in Disney's Snow White, West Side Story, and The Hunger Games. Sounds impressive, right? But here's the kicker, it's crickets at the box office. When you check the ticket site for June performances, it's a sea of green lights, and that's not a good thing. the entire month is wide open. Not a single show is sold out, not even close. Every seat for every night is just sitting there untouched. That's a nightmare for any production, especially one at a major venue like the Palladium, which is no joke in the theater world. This isn't some fringe play in a back alley. This is supposed to be a high-profile stage comeback. But the empty seats tell the real story. Rachel Zegler, despite the studio push and endless headlines, just isn't pulling people in. She doesn't have that star power where folks are racing to see her live. And that's a huge red flag for someone being positioned as Hollywood's next big star. To see the difference, take a peek at other shows running at the same time. John Lithgow's production, for instance, way fewer seats left. That's what happens when an actor actually moves tickets. It's clear, Hollywood's been betting hard on Zegler, but the audience just isn't playing along. This whole situation screams loud and clear. The industry's out of touch with what regular people actually want to see. Watching this whole situation unfold feels like watching a studio exec run headfirst into a brick wall, over and over, thinking maybe this time it'll magically turn into a door. To be fair, West Side Story flopping wasn't totally on Rachel Zegler. Spielberg's remake dropped in the middle of the pandemic, when theaters were still struggling to bounce back. Plus, let's not forget, musicals haven't exactly been killing it at the box office lately. But even after that weak performance, Disney still went all in and dropped hundreds of millions on her for Snow White, one of their most legendary characters. That's a wild gamble. And it shows just how stubborn the studio system can be when it locks in on someone. It's like they hype each other up behind the scenes, building this fantasy that an actor is the next big thing. Even when the audience clearly isn't feeling it, it's giving serious déjà vu. Remember how Hollywood kept pushing Jai Courtney or Sam Worthington into every blockbuster they could, even though the buzz from viewers was meh at best? That same playbook is being used again here. The Snow White box office numbers aren't just bad. They're brutal. When you crunch the real numbers, Disney's staring at a loss of around $200 million. That's not a stumble, it's a full-on faceplant. Back in the day, a flop that size could seriously derail a rising star's career. But now, Hollywood's just doubling down. It's like they've made their casting choices and they're sticking to them no matter what. And the real twist in this story? Rachel Zegler didn't exactly help herself either. Before the movie even dropped, some of her own comments about Snow White stirred up a lot of drama. In interview after interview, Rachel Zegler made comments that rubbed longtime fans the wrong way. Hard. She called the prince stalkerish and said the new Snow White would fix outdated elements from the original 1937 classic. That didn't go over well. At all. The moment those clips started circulating, it turned into a PR meltdown. She ended up alienating the exact fans Disney was counting on before the film even hit theaters. Here's the thing, when an actor publicly disses the source material, especially something as beloved as Snow White, it almost never ends well. It sends a loud message. I don't really get what made the original special. And audiences pick up on that quick. Successful actors in hit remakes usually show major respect for the classics. They talk about how much they loved the original and then explain how they're adding a fresh twist. That balance matters. Now, the AIDA situation makes this whole thing even more telling. Stage shows don't run on hype, they run on skill. Theater fans are picky, and they'll drop serious money for shows they believe in. So when a huge venue like the London Palladium has zero buzz and every seat wide open for someone with Hollywood star status, that's loud, real loud. Sure, you could argue that theater and film are two different games, but real stars, the ones who click with people, usually shine across both. Think of Hugh Jackman. he can dominate Broadway and pack cinemas without blinking. Those kinds of performers don't struggle to fill seats. What's wild is how entertainment media still keeps pushing this Rachel Zegler is a major star story. They keep shouting about her Golden Globe win for West Side Story, like that one award cancels out all the flops. It's a perfect example of how Hollywood builds a narrative out of thin air, even when the facts on the ground tell a completely different story. Hollywood is out here trying to force a star into existence, like they're trying to will Rachel Zegler's fame into reality just because they already cashed in on the hype. But here's the million-dollar question. How many big-budget flops can a young actor take before studios finally stop betting the bank on them? Back in the day, not many. 1 or 2 failures and you were toast. But today's Hollywood? They're pushing forward like losses don't even matter. And here's the weird part. Most people don't even hate Zegler. It's not like audiences are booing her off screens. Like we said earlier, Snow White didn't tank because of her acting. The real villains were the awful script and head-scratching creative choices. She's got the skills. She can sing, she can act, she's clearly got some talent. The problem is how the studios are handling her. They threw her straight into mega productions with no warm-up, skipping the part where she builds a loyal fan base or proves she can bring in box office numbers. That kind of star-making blitz just doesn't work anymore. These days, viewers have unlimited choices at their fingertips, and nobody's gonna buy a ticket just because Hollywood says, "Hey, she's a star now." True star power grows naturally. You earn it with standout roles, smart career moves, and connecting with fans in a real way. It's not something you can fake with awards and fancy promo. Just look at how the real breakout stars are doing it. Florence Pugh, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, they took their time, mixed indie hits with smart blockbuster roles, and won people over piece by piece. That's how you actually build a career that lasts. Studios need to stop force-feeding stardom and start letting it happen the way it's supposed to, through talent and trust from the audience. Actors like Florence Pugh and Zendaya were given time. Time to grow their fan base, sharpen their skills, and pick roles that actually made sense. They weren't tossed into the deep end of $300 million bets from the jump. But with Snow White and now Ada, Rachel Zegler's been dropped into the spotlight without the usual foundation, and now the cracks are showing big time. So here we are. Her supposed star vehicle flopped at the box office. Her high-profile stage debut couldn't sell a single row of seats. In old-school Hollywood, this would be the moment to step back, regroup, and reset the career path. But not now. The industry seems stubbornly locked in on Zegler, pushing forward like the warning signs don't exist. Her next major gig was the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, where she played Lucy Gray Baird. It pulled in about $330 million globally off a $100 million budget. Not bad at all. But let's be real, that wasn't a Rachel Zegler success. That was the Hunger Games brand carrying the weight. People showed up for the franchise, not necessarily for her. If a Hollywood exec looked at this with a clear head, they'd be hitting the brakes. The box office numbers aren't lining up with the investment being poured into her. Betting big on a lead who hasn't proven they can carry a movie solo? That's risky business. It's like watching someone lose hand after hand at a casino, but still shoving chips onto the table like the next round is the one. And now? Despite Snow White's weak performance, Disney's still pushing forward, planning to release it in China this June, clearly praying for a financial lifeline. But here's the problem. China's box office has become real picky with Western films. Unless Snow White has some hidden appeal that magically connects with Chinese audiences, which seems super unlikely given how Western and niche the fairy tale is, this just screams desperation. This whole mess highlights the real issue: Hollywood's obsession with manufacturing stars instead of letting them earn it the old-fashioned way. When you skip the groundwork, you end up with flops, frustration, and empty theaters. Rachel Zegler could have had a whole different path if Hollywood just played it smart. If she'd been allowed to slowly climb the ladder, with solid roles in smaller films, supporting parts, maybe a few indie gems, she might be in a completely different spot right now. But instead, she got thrown straight into the deep end, slapped on the posters of massive, expensive movies before she even had a chance to prove herself. Now she's the face of multiple high-profile flops, and that kind of label sticks, fair or not. This fast track to stardom game isn't just risky for studios, it can straight up damage careers. When a new actor gets pushed into the spotlight too soon and the project tanks, it builds a story around them. Suddenly, they're seen as not bankable, even if the failure had nothing to do with their performance. It's a harsh cycle, and once that narrative sets in, it's real hard to shake off. What makes Zegler's situation so fascinating is how it ties into the bigger shifts happening in entertainment. That old-school idea of a movie star pulling in crowds on name alone? It's fading fast. People today aren't just chasing names, they want good stories, strong franchises, and fresh concepts. Who's starring in the film? That's secondary. And this new reality makes things tough for up-and-coming actors. Studios still want big names to reduce risk, but it's almost impossible to become a big name without time, patience, and the right roles. So what happens? Studios panic and try to create instant stars through massive tentpole films. But without that gradual growth, it almost always backfires. Look at the ones who did break through and stick around. Florence Pugh, Zendaya, Timothée Chalamet. They balanced their careers. They mixed prestige dramas with blockbuster hits, indies with studio productions. That kind of strategy shows range, builds trust with critics, and reaches different parts of the audience. That's the blueprint. Earn it step by step, not by skipping to the finale. Rachel Zegler never really got the chance to grow into stardom. She got catapulted straight into mega-budget territory, and now she's stuck with the fallout. But the real takeaway here isn't that she lacks talent or potential. It's way bigger than that. What we're seeing is a total breakdown in how Hollywood develops new stars. The system's busted. They've forgotten that audience connection isn't something you can just build in a boardroom. It has to be earned, role by role, film by film. You can't fake chemistry with the crowd. That bond forms when viewers feel something, and that only comes from consistent, meaningful performances in projects that actually resonate. So what should Ziegler do now? If this were chess, the smart move would be to step back from the front lines. She doesn't need another high-pressure lead role in a $200 million gamble. She needs to regroup. Taking strong supporting roles in smaller, respected films would give her a real shot at redemption. It'd let her show range, earn critical praise, and connect with fans without having to carry the entire movie on her back. Just a few great roles in the right projects could totally shift her trajectory. But the big question, will the industry let that happen? That's where it gets tricky. Hollywood has a hard time admitting when it messed up. If an executive backed a rising star and it didn't work out, admitting that feels like taking a loss personally. So instead of a dramatic fall from grace, we'll probably see something quieter. Studios won't blackball her outright, but they'll slowly start recasting those big lead roles with safer bets. A silent fade, where she gets fewer calls for top-billed parts. Because at the end of the day, the numbers speak louder than loyalty. The whole Snow White situation says less about Rachel Zegler as a performer and more about how far off track the Hollywood machine has gone. It's a prime example of what happens when the echo chamber gets too loud and studios stop listening to the one voice that really matters. the audience.